Hello, everybody. This is Nikki from Motherhood Unfiltered, and it's going to be okay. And today I have Dr. Edward Smink on the line, and I'm really excited to talk to him today about caregiver fatigue. And we'll probably touch on some other topics. But Dr. Edward Smink is the founder of the Soul of Caregiving coaching practice. He's an in-demand speaker, a coach, author of The Soul of Caregiving, A Caregiver's Guide to Healing and Transformation. Edward holds an associate degree in nursing from Newton Junior College, a BA in psychology from Boston College, an MA in counseling and psychology, an MA and PhD in in-depth psychology from Practice Graduate Institute. And the list goes on. I just have my undergrad, he's been a busy person. But before I bring him on, I just want to remind you, if you're listening on the podcast, to go out and rate and review the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please comment, like, and subscribe. And if you've already done that because you're awesome, then please share it with someone that you care about. So without further ado, here is Dr. Edward Smink. Hi, Edward.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you so much for having me on this morning.
Well, thank you for coming on. I've just really been excited. I love to hear about people who have been working on, projects to help other people. Because a lot of times we can't go out and do the research and figure out what the heck to do and how can we make our lives better. So I was really looking forward to our conversation today. So if you could tell us, I mean, I know I listed, all of your degrees, but tell us, what made you want to do this particular project?
Well, growing up in an alcoholic family, you learn very quickly different roles. And I realized that in the depths of my being, I was a caregiver. And so
Mhm.
I wanted to reach out in many ways. I used to belong to a religious community of brothers that worked in healthcare. And that's
Mm.
where I got my registered nursing. And
Mhm.
I would always spend extra time with the patients, no matter how busy it was. And I always wanted to learn more about them. And I then decided that I would go into chaplaincy. And I did that for a while. And then I became an executive director at uh, two or three different healthcare centers in which we worked in mission, and which has to do with why does an organization exist, and
Mhm.
also worked with trying to have the associates understand their, I'll use the words in quote, their unique calling to
Yeah,
healthcare. And
right.
so I did that. And then I decided I'd write a book. And the book talks about caregiving, and we're all caregivers. We all
Mhm.
we all think that caregiving has to do with those who are doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals. But I
Mhm.
say we're all caregivers because at the heart of being human is to care. So
Mhm.
just think of motherhood. Just think of that
Yeah,
that archetype. It's bigger than who we are. And yet at
right.
the same time, we care for our children. We care
Mhm.
for our spouses. First responders care for those that they respond to. School teachers care for their students. And you could go
Right.
on and on and on. So we're all caregivers. So I've
Yeah.
expanded it. And
Well,
I just enjoy reaching out and offering hope. I really like your tagline, it's going to be okay. Because when we're going through any traumatic event, and anything can be traumatic,
yeah.
and it depends on how the person filters that.
Mhm.
there's something within us that needs to know it's still going to be okay.
Right.
And
Right.
when we come to that awareness, that gives us the energy to bear what we're bearing and go
Mhm.
deeper into the our own unique spiritual um, values. And I
Mhm.
explain that also in the book, The Difference of Spirituality. So that's
Right.
what I do, and I'm excited about it, and I'm excited to be with you and everyone today. So,
Yeah. It's, that tagline was kind of an afterthought, but that's I always in the back of my mind, always have this little bit of hope. It's going to be okay. It may suck right now, but I know it's gotta get better. It can't get even worse than what it already has, whatever I was going through. So, so I always like to think, yeah, you might be going through some crap right now, but you just keep being, perseverant and you will. It's gonna get better. It's going to be okay. You're gonna live through this. It it's like ripping the Band-Aid off,
well, James Hillman, a very well-known psychotherapist in depth psychology, says it's in the midst of affliction that the
Mhm.
gods or God appears. So
Yeah.
it's uncanny that when we think when we're at our wits' end, all of a sudden we gain insight, and
Yeah.
that's the archetype of the wounded healer that we can experience within the midst of affliction something sacred within ourselves,
Right.
and that's what gives us hope.
Do you sometimes that people that might be in the middle of an affliction may not catch on to that, and they just keep going through it, or maybe it's there and they're not seeing it, or maybe they have to just keep trying. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've been through some things before and I'm like, "What? Why am I keep going through this?" Like I'm not catching on. And then, it might be a while later and I go through it again and I'm like, "Oh, duh." You know.
Well, I think our psyche, or I'll call our soul, is always interested in healing. And so healing is cyclical.
Uh-huh.
And what happens is it keeps coming up and then finally we get it. And that's when we turn to those inner resources within ourselves
Yeah.
that helps us make other choices and decisions.
Right.
I went through burnout and compassion fatigue, and it took me quite a while to understand
Mhm.
what how I was putting my head in the lion's mouth.
Yeah.
I really enjoy pain, so those teeth, going back and forth, I really enjoyed it. And
I
that's
got really good at it. I just kept doing it.
and that's something that a lot of us are so used to the pain, and we think
Right.
the
Yeah.
pain of healing is worse than what we're experiencing,
Oh, yeah.
but it's
Oh,
not.
Lord. Yeah.
When we gain that insight, then the lion's mouth opens up, and then
Yep.
we're the lion. We're able to capture those moments that lead us away from the persons that we really are.
Yeah. It kinda reminds me that we will get used to the circumstances in our life, and even if they're bad circumstances, and, um, and even though we know we need to get out of those situations, it's comfortable, it's what we know, and we keep going right back to it. I mean, how do we get out of that? I feel like and it's really hard. It's really hard to break away from those. Like if it's someone you shouldn't be around, but you've known them so long that and you just know how to act when you're around them, but you don't want to be that person anymore. I mean, what I mean, why do we keep doing that? It does it go back to the same thing and just learning and being in a cycle and
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we don't pause and reflect.
Oh,
We don't,
yeah.
we, stop the world. Stop the merry-go-round. I want to get off. We're
Yeah.
Just think of our culture today. We want to buy the newest object. We want to get the latest news. So we're listening
Yeah.
to the news, and they say, "Oh, breakthrough! There's another aspect to that news," and we just keep
Mm.
spinning and spinning. And I believe the antidote to compassion fatigue, and which goes helps us to develop compassion resilience, and I'll talk about that, is
Mhm.
to reflect. So how do we learn? Like, if it's keep on gnawing us, what happens?
Mhm.
What in us says, "Oh, why is that constantly repeating itself?"
Yeah.
What do I have to look at? And
Mhm.
one of the chief um, leaders in working with compassion fatigue, Dr. Grundy, says that when you acknowledge there's a problem,
Mhm.
then you're able to start working on it. But
Mhm.
our culture says we have to be invincible. Our
Yeah.
culture says, don't ask for help. Our frontier
Yeah.
culture, and there's a good aspect to that in the fact that we're always wanting to be creative. That's wonderful.
Mhm.
But the shadow side of being creative is that we don't allow ourselves to do those, to stop and realize we don't have to have the best of this. We don't have to have the perfect this. We don't even have
Mhm.
to be perfect. In fact,
Mhm.
in the Hebrew scriptures and the Christian scriptures, when it says be as perfect as God is perfect, that's a
Mhm.
mistranslation. What it really means is be as loving as your heavenly Father is loving.
Oh, okay.
So why do we have to be perfect? Were you perfect? Am I perfect? And when I was giving in service to new employees where I used to work, we
Yeah.
had a value of excellence. And I said, why do we have a value of excellence? We have a value of excellence because we're always striving to become better. And I,
Right.
I said, is there anyone in this room who is perfect? No one raised their hand. And then I said, and don't we just hate those people who think they are perfect?
Yeah, like, who do they think they are?
And going back to your sense of being around certain people, you can choose not to be around them,
Right.
or you can say, I'm gonna build that boundary around me where I'm not going to let them influence me. That's called resilience.
Okay. Okay.
Okay? Resilience is that capacity to enter into a situation without it um, sending you into a snowball. As
Right. Yeah. Where you're turned into a big dumpster fire.
well, I can give an example. I remember once I was um, in a patient care conference where this mother was talking with the doctor about her 30-something-year-old daughter who had a cerebral hemorrhage. She had a bleeding in her
Oh,
brain, and
yeah.
the doctor said, "Well, there's two ways of dealing with it. We could do immediate surgery, or we can wait till it settles." And her position was she wanted to wait till it settled. And
Mhm.
so the mother didn't like this. So the doctor worked with her to get her transferred to another hospital. She comes back, 2 weeks later into the rehab unit. And I,
Mhm.
I walk in because we always, the person on call always welcomed the new patients. And I went
Right.
in and she said, don't you remember me? And I'm going, mm-hmm. And then she says, oh, and that terrible doctor. And I said, I was pouring kerosene on the fire. And I said, well, I remember she really bent over backwards to help you. Well, she just blew up. Vitriolic. I was covered with murder. Now, that's another thing I learned. It wasn't about me.
Right.
And I remember leaving the room. I remember going out the door into the parking lot, going into the main hospital, going up to the 5th floor. And as I'm getting out of the elevator, one of my friends, a social worker, said, Ed, what's happened to you? And I said, don't say anything. I have to scrape all this stuff off of me. And I didn't use stuff. So, you know, that's called resilience.
Yeah.
We're able to face it, but we're also realizing it's not about me.
Right. You just
Her,
happen to be there.
she had the freedom to vent her anger about the situation. It wasn't
Yeah.
about me again. She was
Right.
really angry that her daughter is now handicapped.
Yeah. Yep. I I've definitely been in some situations like that. And then I decided I was going to make it about me. So, and that wasn't the right thing to do.
And you get covered more and more with murder.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So one little thing about resilience, and then we can go on. But so, what if you feel like you don't have resilience? Is that where you would decide, okay, maybe I just need to exclude myself from the situation until I feel like I can, or just try to use what resilience you got?
well,
I mean, I don't want to set anybody up for failure, but
let's talk about, motherhood. There are times when you're very loving towards your children, and there are times you feel you want to kill them. Okay, do you really want to kill
yeah,
them? No, but the feeling
no,
is I've had enough of blah, 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 blah,
yeah.
and I have to lay
That's
the
when I would
law.
lock myself in the bathroom. I did
Exactly.
that a lot.
And so resilience is listening.
Yeah.
What is the child really wanted to say? And
Yeah.
oftentimes parents expect them to act a certain way, but they're trying to tell us something.
Mm,
And so
good point.
can we listen and say, well, I'm afraid of the dark. Well, tell me about that. Well, you're a
Mhm.
big boy, you shouldn't be afraid of the dark. Well, that's not going to
Mhm.
help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, tell me about it. Well, I had this terrible dream. Well, what was it about? I want to hear it. And I
Mhm.
want to let you know everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. I There were times when we would go on a trip, like a day-long trip, and on the way back, we would maybe we would drive an hour away and go do something. On the way back, you thought we were gonna kill each other in the vehicle on the way home.
Yeah.
So I got to the point that when we did something like that, the first thing we did was everybody had to go to their room and spend 10 minutes alone. And once I we started doing that, everybody was back to their regular selves. It was a miracle. So that's great. Yeah, you can see,
I could
Ari
see
over
it's
here.
wonderful. That's a miracle too. He's saying, "What about me?"
Oh, he thinks he's it.
Okay. Well,
But,
the bottom line is that after a trip, people are tired
yeah,
and
exactly.
they get cranky.
Yeah, yeah. So so we've been talking about compassion fatigue, but why do, like, why do mothers experience and it oh my lord, cat. Nobody.
That's okay.
Oh my goodness, hold on. He totally took me off the screen.
Okay.
So, so mothers, they experience that a lot. How what are what would be one of the first symptoms that they would get, or how would they recognize that?
Well, let me explain what compassion fatigue is.
Okay.
Compassion fatigue is doing something that you love.
Mm-hmm.
And doing something that you love, you're constantly reinforced by those certain moments where you feel you're really a great mother,
Mm-hmm.
and also by your spouse or friends that you're really doing a great job. And you
Mm-hmm.
keep doing it, but you get exhausted.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it goes down to the bottom line of self-care.
Mm.
We, in our culture, again, there are three cultural taboos that we've learned. The first we talked about a little bit is not recognizing I have a need. So the
Right.
need of a mother is to take care of herself. And I feel I don't have time. I feel
Yeah.
I feel that it's going to be I'm going to be shamed. If
Mm-hmm.
I actually acknowledge that I really want to go to the beauty parlor today, and I'm asking my husband to babysit.
Yeah.
What are you doing that for? Blah, blah, blah. So that's the first thing, is that we don't acknowledge we have a need. The second
Mm-hmm.
is we don't tell our story. We don't tell the stories of what we're experiencing. It's
Mm.
like you want to say to your husband, I know you're busy, and but I want you to listen to what happened to me today.
Yeah.
I don't want your advice. I just want you to hear me.
Yeah.
Well, today X, Y, and Z happened, and I felt like I was going to pull my hair out, and I felt I was going to, uh, spank the kids 500 times, and blah
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And
Right.
will that other person listen? Now, it might be one of your girlfriends. It could be on this show. It could
Mm-hmm.
be, to a trusted clergy person or a counselor, or
Mm-hmm.
another good friend. But
Right.
what you want to say to them right up front is, I I don't want your advice.
Yeah. I
I
just
want,
need you to hear me.
I just need you to hear me. So that's
Right.
in our culture today. It's difficult to find someone we could trust that wants to hear us,
Yeah.
because we're so busy. So think of the first responders. Think of the police. Think
Mm-hmm.
of the doctor that just experienced a bad situation in
Mm-hmm.
the ER. Immediately, they have to go to the next thing, and
Right.
so, but that keeps building up until one day he or she just burst out in anger because he or she wants to be heard.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the
Yeah.
second one. We don't tell our story. And the
Mm-hmm.
third is we don't share our emotions.
That is true.
We don't talk about our emotions. We don't say, honey, I really got pissed off today,
Mm-hmm.
when X, Y, and Z. I mean, growing up, were you ever rewarded for any of your emotions?
No. No
Were,
way.
were you were you ever thanked when you got angry? Oh, Nikki, come here. Tell me why you're angry. I mean, do mothers ask their children, "Oh, you're angry," instead of
No.
saying, "Don't
Yeah.
be angry," just say, "Oh, you're angry.
Right.
Can you tell me what you're angry about?" Well, mommy, you said
Yeah.
you would read to me, and you didn't read to me. Oh, I forgot. I'm sorry. Will you
Yeah,
forgive me?
exactly.
So, and caregivers in particular, we're all caregivers, but there are times
Right.
when we just feel, we need to share our emotions. Like, your husband brings you, or your spouse brings you flowers. Do you, wow, I love
Mhm.
you. I love you. Or do we say, oh my God, flowers? I have to go find the vase. So those are three cultural things. Now,
Right.
you asked what are the symptoms? Well, they could be emotional.
Mhm.
You get short, you get irritable easy, you lose your
Yeah.
patience. They could be physical. You could
Mhm.
overeat or undereat or have insomnia. Uh, and they could be psychospiritual because you're not dealing with your real values. And,
Oh,
and so
wow.
therefore you move to that place. Well, I make a distinction between caregivers
Mhm.
and caretakers.
Yeah.
Caregivers are those that are excited, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
Caretakers are those that go, oh my God, I got to go to work today. Oh God.
Yeah.
So, so those are some of the symptoms that come up, and most of us know something is going on.
Yeah.
If we're really true to ourselves, we know something's going on. So compassion fatigue is because we do something we love.
Right.
Compassion resilience is learning how to take care of ourselves, to set
Mhm.
boundaries, and to say, um, well, I can't do that today.
Right. Right.
When I had burnout, I had the wonderful opportunity to meet this wonderful Jesuit priest who was a psychotherapist, and he saved my life.
Mhm.
And I remember one day saying, how long is this going to take? And where am I? And he said, Ed, on a scale of 1 to 10, you're between 8 and 9. And I
Oh my
considered
goodness.
I considered 10 irreversible. And then he
Oh.
said, and this all has prompted me to be a better caregiver because I understand
Mhm.
the experiences. And then I said, well, I want to do what the Holy Spirit wants me to do. And he started laughing. And
Yeah.
he said, Edward, the Holy Spirit wants you to do what's the easiest thing to do. I've never forgotten that. So
Right.
in the course of my day, if I feel overwhelmed, I say, Edward, what's the easiest thing to do? What's the low hanging fruit?
Mhm.
And if we learn to do that, if we make that, it's called chunking it. If we make that opportunity to do one little thing, that builds our self confidence. We
Gotcha.
regain the fact that we're not overwhelmed. I mean,
Mm.
life itself can overwhelm us. I mean,
Right.
we're all coming out of the pandemic, and the pandemic changed our lives.
Yeah, everybody. It's like we're all in the same boat together now.
Exactly. We share a common woundedness,
Mhm.
and so that some people have used that to become better people. Others
Mhm.
are sort of in the middle, and others are still complaining about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true.
So building that resilience helps us to make those simple, very simple choices.
Right, right.
So sometimes the day before we say, what do I have to do the next day? And maybe we come up with 5 or 6 things. And as the day progresses, maybe we only done 2.
Mhm. Mhm.
So what?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I I don't think I ever learned that as a mom. I felt like I had to do the same thing every day, and make sure they all got done, and everybody had to be in bed by a certain time, we had to have homework done, everything, and I just put so much pressure on myself, and then it got to the point where I couldn't handle anything extra because I
Exactly.
was so boxed in,
Yes.
and now I feel like, oh, I could have just been more relaxed. I could have had more enjoyment with the boys when I was raising them, you know. Um,
So
so
there's always opportunities now to say, you know,
yeah.
growing up, I was a real bee, but I love you, and let's talk about it.
Well, I can with my oldest and my youngest. My middle one, he's still struggling with the pain. So I we have different kinds of conversations. So
Well, you can say to him, you know, I realize after so many years, we're like two
mhm.
ships going different ways, and I
Yeah.
just want to acknowledge that. And is there any way
Yeah.
I can help to make it better?
Right, right,
So then
exactly.
you become vulnerable, and that's
Yeah.
another issue that most of us are very uncomfortable in being vulnerable.
I'm very uncomfortable with it, but I just stutter through it and I say the words. I mean, I really mean them, but it's hard for me to say them. And, but I just, that's just where you care more about them than you do yourself in that moment and wanting to make sure that they understand where you're coming from. I don't want them to make the same mistakes that I made. I mean, I know they're boys and they're going to be fathers, but they only had a mother when, raising him. So, but they can learn some things, from my mistakes. So,
Well, you can make fun of it with two of your boys. You can say, "You remember that experience? You know, I was, you
oh
know."
yeah, my oldest, he lets me know, and we laugh about it. I was like, yeah, I was a big ding dong.
Well, you can say I was a perfectional holic,
Yeah, exactly. I
and
was, and even in my work, people I've worked with, I've been there 20 years. They've seen me in the before and they see me in the after, and they definitely like me better now because back then I was like, "There's no room for mistakes here, people. We're not doing this." So,
well, yeah, that's unfortunate, but that's what happened.
yeah, yeah, it
Um,
does.
I have a nephew, and his wife is always reading the best book about how to parent. And
Yeah,
I'm saying, just listen to them. They'll teach you.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Listen to the kids. I mean, if you are very in tune with your kids, when they start acting out, you'll know exactly what they need, and especially once they start talking, they'll tell you, what the matter is as best as they can. So we just need, yeah, you're right. We just need to listen.
And the
Um,
other aspect is, how do we let go of thinking we were an imperfect mother?
yeah, yeah, that's hard. I'm
Well,
still, I'm still holding on by a string
well,
because
that's
it's about forgiving yourself as a parent.
I have a quote that we're all in our prisons, and we continue to paint the bars of our gate of our the bars of the prison gold, because we think that's better for us. And at the same time, we have the key in our hand. The key is in our hand, and we could open the door and get out.
Yeah.
So, and I'm learning more and more that if the sacred, however we define the sacred, is
Mhm.
love,
Mhm.
what am I doing to myself to block out love?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So if I'm holding on to something, I'm really not hospitable to love.
Yeah,
And I
that's
talk about
true.
hospitality in my book, that
Mhm.
it's being learning from our life experiences to be open to them, how they teach
Mhm.
us.
Wow. That's really good, Edward. I really like that. Um, so how can we find your book? I know you have your own website where we can get it.
It there's three different ways you can get the book. The first is
Okay.
on Amazon. You could order it on Amazon,
Mhm.
or actually two different ways. And the second is, the there are three. The second is
Mhm.
on my website. You can order it on my website. And the third
Mhm.
is you can ask me for a signed copy and I'll mail it to you.
Okay. So your website is the soulofcaregiving.com?
It is.
Okay. I'll put that in the show notes. So, and the name of the book is,
The Soul of
um
Caregiving, a caregiver's guide to healing and transformation. And the reason I call it the soul of caregiving is because
mhm.
it goes down to those deeper aspects of who we are as a person.
Yeah.
Most of us have different understandings of soul. We think of ghosts,
Mhm.
blah, no matter what our religious orientation is or spiritual orientation. But I
Mhm.
consider it the life principle within us. And I
Mm.
explain it very simply. I say, look at my hand. Well, it's matter and spirit, isn't it?
Mhm. Yeah.
I know the difference as a nurse between a living hand and a hand that has died.
Right.
So the spirit has left.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
I call it the animating spirit within us that helps us be who we are. Our vocation, our calling in life as a mother, as a spouse, as whatever your profession is, that you feel
Mhm.
called to it. And when we're in
Mhm.
touch with those deeper values, we're able to make choices,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
and and we're able to understand that it's not a grievous sin to ask for help.
It's not. I
You
mean,
know,
there's lots of stories in the Bible where people went up to Jesus and asked for help or asked for something specific,
right?
and we
It's
should
true.
remember that.
And you could, if your children were at home now, or those who have children at home,
Mhm.
you know, in our Western culture, we think we have to do the extended. We don't have a notion of the extended family. We have the nuclear family, and it doesn't work. In the Eastern and Mediterranean cultures, everything is family: aunts,
Mhm.
uncles, cousins. Um,
Mhm.
if there's a decision to be made in the hospital, everyone comes.
Mhm. Yeah.
So the doctor has 40 people in the waiting room. And I often say to them, can you choose a spokesperson? Because the doctor isn't going to talk to 40 people.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the wonderful aspect of it is they're all involved in the caregiving. They're all involved in child rearing. So you can
Mhm.
say to cousin so and so, I'm not feeling well today. Can you pick the kids up?
Mhm.
Or blah blah. And it's done freely. It's not like a big excuse or a big
Right.
burden. So
Right,
uh,
right.
so I wanted to talk a little bit about burnout versus compassion fatigue. So
Okay.
compassion fatigue, as I said, is doing something that you love. Burnout is doing something that you love, but you're not getting any type of reinforcement or affirmation that you're doing a good job. So
Mhm.
there are some organizations that you can work for and that you feel like you're a clog in the wheel. And no matter what you do, it doesn't give you this personal human satisfaction that you're a gifted person. And so therefore you feel burnt out.
Mhm.
And during the pandemic, the doctors and nurses and healthcare professionals broke that taboo of silence and said, we need help.
Yeah.
Because it's just spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning, and their organizations didn't understand the complexity, but it wasn't their
Mhm.
fault either because who understood what a pandemic is?
Right, right.
So when they had that mutual cooperation, then they were able to come up with some solutions. So
Mhm.
burnout has to do with I just can't stand, I can't take it anymore. I have to get out. And unfortunately, among healthcare professionals, suicide is rising, and
Yeah.
it's not that they choose to be dead, it's that they want to get rid of the pain.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I've actually seen more news articles about mothers who are in the health profession who have tried to commit suicide, you know, and at first my mind was like, I can't even fathom what would lead them to think that would be a viable solution. But just what you said, they're hurting and they don't want to feel that pain anymore.
so take a doctor, take a nurse,
Mhm.
and they're saying, can I share my story
Mhm. Yeah.
with my other healthcare professionals? I had interviewed a physician who was in charge of a neonatal intensive care unit.
Mhm.
And I said, that must be very difficult. And he said, yes, especially when we're dealing with life and death situations, when you know that that
Mhm.
young baby is not going to survive. And I said, can you ever share your emotions and feelings with your other peers? There were like three other doctors that they worked together with. He said, no. He said, if I shared what I was feeling, they would think I was a bad doctor.
Mm.
So
But
right,
he's not. Yeah.
so right from the get-go, they're taught that they have to
Mhm.
bury all those feelings.
Mm.
Now, about a year ago on NBC, Lester Holt interviewed a police chief in some town in Illinois. I can't remember where.
Mhm.
And he was suffering from PTSD. And
Mm.
he finally said to his team, the officers, maybe there were
Mhm.
about 30 officers, maybe
Mhm.
50, I can't remember. But he said, I'm not going to hide it anymore. So he changed the paradigm because often when people feel they have something going on, they're isolated and they feel
Right.
isolated. And he said to his team, from now on, every week, we're going to talk about a story. Whoever wants to talk about a story of how they're feeling, what happened on their job, or something they experienced that was either life-giving or very difficult, we're going to
Mhm.
start telling stories because we are going to become the container to hold those difficult situations. We're not going to
Wow.
exclude Mary or John. We're going to welcome them so they can
Mhm.
tell their stories. That's a
Wow.
paradigm shift,
Yeah, that's amazing.
and how they were able, how that one leader was able to say, we're not going to bury what we're feeling. We're human. And we
Mhm.
all have normal reactions to traumatic effects.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. That's really amazing. I mean, so how do they get that, that's just one place. I feel like that needs to be across the board because it's, our policemen, our firemen, our healthcare workers, all of them are being impacted from, so not just social media, but the news and being judged for doing one thing or doing another thing, and it's their job that they've been doing all along, and they've got people coming out videotaping them for arresting somebody, and then last week or next time they arrest the same kind of person and it's wrong, and now it's okay. And I mean, how do we change that, you know, to where they can talk about, listen, I'm, I'm a human being and I'm doing what I feel I want to be of service.
Well, what's happening because of the social media is
Mhm.
really helping police and fire agencies uncover the code of silence.
Mm. Mhm.
they're able, which is a taboo. I mean, the taboo was to talk
Mhm.
about the experience.
Yeah.
So it's uncovering it, and they're realizing that within their ranks, there's a few bad apples.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so let's talk about it,
Mhm.
and let's not hide it. So the silver lining is really helping police forces and and fire agencies to be able to listen and listen to the community.
Mhm.
You know, why are people afraid of the police? And I'm talking
Mhm.
about across racial boundaries. Most of us are
Mhm.
afraid of the police. Where does that come from?
I'm afraid.
You know, and if we come from an experience of being other than white, then it's even compounded even more. I don't feel
Yeah.
safe when
Yeah.
there is a. So
Yeah.
the community is then saying, well, we're going to tape everything. We're going to show the issues. Well,
Yeah.
that's a positive thing.
Yeah.
However, it can get abused.
Oh, yeah. For sure. We
So
do like to
I would, you know, I remember when I was traveling a lot and I would walk into a restroom and there was someone cleaning it. I would say, thank you for doing a good job.
Mhm.
And their eyes lit up, you know. Well, if I see a
Well, I'm
police,
appreciative.
when I see a policeman in the car, I go like this, you know, not, I don't,
Mhm.
I use this finger, not the other one.
Well,
And
that's good. I hope you would never use your other finger.
I'd be arrested. And, or if I see him, in the streets or whatever, I say, thank you for doing a good job.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's how we deal with it. And
That's true.
also educating,
Mhm.
there's a lot of education. Why are we so fearful of people of color?
Oh, well, I mean, I don't know because I'm not. I grew up with people of color. Lived in neighborhood where they lived. I went to school with them. And there's no reason to be afraid of them. That's silly. I mean, now if they come after me with a Uzi or a ball bat, I mean, I'm gonna be
Yeah,
afraid of that person.
of course. But my nephew is a police officer who became a sergeant and then became in charge of the Garden State Police. I mean, he was all over the
Yeah.
place. And, I would say to him, why do police officers draw their guns so quickly?
Oh, yeah.
So that
Yeah.
whole sense of de-escalating a situation.
Yeah.
They're fearful they're going to be, he said, they're fearful they're going to be shot for a traffic
Well, I
violation. Well, maybe, but
yeah.
so anyway, it brings up a whole can of worms, and that'll take another hour.
It does. I'm so glad we had this chance to talk, and hopefully we can have another conversation in the future. Um, I really enjoyed it. And so your website is tell us again your website and the name of your book?
Soulofcaregiving.com. And the name
Mhm.
of the book is The Soul of Caregiving, A Caregiver's Guide to Healing and Transformation.
Well, I'm look forward to getting a copy of that because I know I need it. Well, thank you, Edward, and I hope that you have a wonderful afternoon.
Well, I certainly enjoyed this time with you, Nikki. It's been a lot of fun. I haven't laughed this much in a long time.
Well, that's one thing you can expect from me, a conversation and some laughing.
Well, laughing, they say, is healing. And that's another thing you could do if you're in a bad situation. Think of a
Mhm.
time when you did a belly laugh that just brought you to tears.
Yeah.
And that takes you right out of the
Yeah.
slump.
Exactly. I say either if I don't laugh about it, I'm going to cry about it, and I'm tired of crying. So
As you said,